House Foreign Affairs Subcommittee on Africa held a hearing on the ongoing religious freedom violations in Nigeria and whether Africa's most populous nation should be officially designated as a country of particular concern by the U.S. State Department. I joined the hearing as a witness along with three others, including a Catholic bishop from Nigeria who traveled to this country at great risk. In fact, his village was burned just a couple of days ago. Well, returning the favor, coming off the Hill into the studio with me now is the chairman of the African Subcommittee, Congressman Chris Smith of New Jersey. In addition to chairing that subcommittee, Congressman Smith is also a senior member on the House Committee on Foreign Affairs and the co-chair of the Tom Lantos Human Rights Commission. He represents the 4th Congressional District of New Jersey. Congressman Smith, thanks for coming into the studio and joining me.
Thank you. And your listeners should know, your viewers, that you did a superb job today. As the former chairman of the International Religious Freedom Commission, which you really did a tremendous job in that position, you just spoke truth to power today. And I want to thank you for that, about the issue itself, and that is the ongoing slaughter. It's a genocide of sorts. It really is, where they're trying to destroy Christians, and it's the radical Islamists that are doing it, the Fulani, the Boko Haram, and others. But I just want to thank you for being so focused and so clear. And I do believe that the Trump administration will hear the call to redesignate Nigeria as a country of particular concern, which makes it actionable in terms of sanctions, including against individuals. That's in the law as well. But again, thank you, Tony. You were outstanding.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that, Chris. But you have been a stalwart on human rights, religious freedom. In fact, the law that allowed for international religious freedom, you co-authored along with Frank Wolf. You've led that. In fact, the latest version, you authored that, so I appreciate all that you've been doing. Let's talk and just kind of unpack this. We've got a little bit of time. Let's unpack it for our listeners. Country of particular concern, that's a formal term that is reserved for those countries that either engage in or tolerate systematic, egregious abuse of its citizens when it comes to religious freedom. Nigeria is one where it's not the state that is necessarily the actor that is perpetrating the violence, but the testimony today and what I saw on the U.S. Commission on International Religious Freedom, which led us to push for that designation, is that they turn a blind eye.
Totally. And you just gave the definition of what warrants being placed on that list, again, which can lead to very significant sanctions against that country.
When you talk about sanctions, what does that mean? What's that
the simplest, there's about 18 of them, starts with a simple démarche, but all kinds of cooperation with the country, security, aid, which really gets the mind of some people.
So it's like foreign aid, which we give a lot of foreign aid out.
Not humanitarian aid. Right. So food,
you made that clear to them.
That's very clear. But other kinds of aid, and we provide all kinds of aid overseas. People are seeing it now with the USAID cuts, how much we do and how nefarious it often is. But it gives the ability of the president and the Secretary of State to say, this is gone because you won't lift a finger. And we heard today, and we've been hearing it for some time now, that as churches are being firebombed, as people are being killed, they call, the equivalent of 911. They call the local law enforcement. They talk to the politicians, and nothing happens. Not only do they not show up in any kind of timely fashion, they might show up 8 hours later to do a death count, and then there's no investigation of any kind of quality. And then nobody's prosecuted. And that's one thing the bishop said today. Nobody's been prosecuted.
But the bishop also pointed out that they had gotten word of an attack. They notified authorities 2 weeks in advance.
Right.
2 weeks in advance.
And nothing.
And they didn't show up.
Anybody listening, it's as if you called your local law enforcement and, like you said, this was in advance, and said, my house is going to be broken into. We're going to be beaten, maybe even killed. Please be there. And there are no shows. So that makes the Nigerian government at every level culpable for this designation, and they need to get it now. CPC.
You and I have been around a while because I remember we had a conversation back in 2014 on this program regarding Boko Haram that had kidnapped schoolgirls.
Yes.
I think it was 102 on
Chibok
that particular
girls,
one,
right.
the Chibok girls. And at that time, Boko Haram, the State Department under Hillary Clinton refused to identify them as a foreign terrorist organization.
It was an abomination. For 3 years, I tried to get the Obama administration and Hillary Clinton to recognize Boko Haram, a radical Islamist organization that kills people, maims them, abducts young girls, turns
in fact,
forcibly.
there's been 17 mass abductions of schools.
Yes, exactly.
And just in the last
Boys
6
and
years.
girls too. They go after both, and they turn them into child soldiers. They turn the women into sex slaves. They force them to become Muslim from their Christian faith, for 3 years. I had hearings on it. I asked the administration repeatedly to do it so that we could find out where the funds are coming from, where the weapons are coming from. What is this Boko Haram organization? And they adamantly refused. And the day I was marking up my bill that would establish the very day, FTO status for Boko Haram, they did it. and that's really after, we saw a departure of Hillary. So it was really missed opportunity for a terrorist group.
But the same thing for the whole country when it comes to the CPC. When I was on the commission, I actually adopted a girl as my prisoner of conscience, Leah Sheribu from Nigeria, who was abducted by Boko Haram. She's still being held, to our knowledge, and has had 2 children in this forced captivity.
Right.
But we saw the first Trump administration give this designation so that sanctions could be used to get the attention of the government, only to have the Biden administration the next year remove it and say that, well, this isn't really religious driven, this is because of scarcity of resources driven by climate change.
Yes.
I mean, this is the kind of stuff that we're dealing with. Hopefully, under this administration, as you pointed out, we'll be able to
Tony,
get that.
you played a major role, and the International Religious Freedom Commission played such a role. I and others were all calling for it, but we got nowhere. They did listen to you, and when they made that designation,
it made a difference.
It made a huge difference, and the Christians were buoyed by it.
We're up against a break. We're going to come back and continue this conversation. Congressman Smith, let's continue that, but I also want to get some feedback on China, because you've been very involved in China for years. But let's wrap this up on Nigeria.
Sure.
Nigeria, the most dangerous place in the world, in the entire world, according to Open Doors. If you're a Christian, it's Nigeria.
And Open Doors is an amazingly credible organization. I've worked with Brother Andrew back in the 80s, along with Frank Wolf, you, and when they say something, they document it, and they have said, like you just suggested or said, the most dangerous place in the world for a Christian is in
Over
Nigeria.
3,100 Christians, almost, I think, 3,200 killed last year.
Just last year alone, plus the abductions. They abduct people and then get huge amounts of money for that, and they rape women, which is an absolute abomination.
It is the same type of Islamist MO that we see elsewhere, and we shouldn't be surprised. Reports, according to Iranian state news, last year, a Hamas delegation visited Nigeria in February, expanding the group's diplomatic outreach to these friendly African countries. Hezbollah also visiting there. Iran very
Another
much
terrorist
involved.
group.
Yeah,
I know that's.
And so we're wondering where they get these weapons. I don't think we have to think too hard when you look at and Turkey as well. Its influence increasing there in Africa.
Money, weapons, the strategic ability to do things, command and control and the like. I mean, they've become more and more sophisticated, and it's not coming from inside of Nigeria, but it's being exploited from without, and they are building up a cadre of thousands of terrorist killers who increasingly are young, very aggressive, and there's no violence that they don't use. Every violence imaginable.
How can our listeners and viewers weigh in on this to be helpful?
I think first and foremost, Tony, is to pray. We need to pray for the persecuted believers all over the world, including in Nigeria, to demand that our own government use every lever imaginable, and we have a lot of them. We got the International Religious Freedom Act. We can sanction individuals as well as countries.
And just to be clear, when we're talking about every tool available, we're not talking about military. We're talking about economic, diplomatic tools that can get the attention of countries. I've seen it.
I know.
It's happened.
And it works.
Yes.
It really does work, particularly with a country that is sitting on its hands, folding its arms, and doing nothing to mitigate this danger to Christians and to some Muslims. When you have a pious Muslim in Nigeria, and if he says something against Boko Haram or one of these other terrorist groups, the Fulani, they're probably killed. I mean, that's how bad it is.
Right.
And it's
harassed
it's
at a minimum. Yeah.
Certainly harassed, but much more likely they'll be killed.
And that's universal. I was just having dinner last night with a mayor of Samaria, and Judea and Samaria, and when he tries to work with moderate Muslim leaders, the Palestinian Authority will arrest them.
Yeah.
And
well, there's no doubt, and this goes for decades, the PLO, the PLA, which it became, and Hamas, which took over the Gaza, they are not just a little bit, but totally committed to creating child soldiers who hate Jews, hate Christians, hate America. And we now see, October 7th was
and
a
we've been
demonstration
funding
of
it.
We've been funding it to the hilt. 20 years ago, I offered an amendment to defund the UN Works Relief Agency. It passed the House, failed in the Senate. We finally, under Trump, defunded them completely. We paid more than half their bill to build up these child soldiers in this hate atmosphere. And when Trump did that in his first term, in comes Biden, and I find this appalling. It just gives them, how much do you want? Let me write that check.
Actually made back payments.
It actually made arrearages or back payments,
right.
Exactly.
Chris Smith, we've got about 2 minutes left. I want to get to China because China is a looming threat as well. But folks, I do want to encourage you to pray for this situation. These are brothers and sisters in Christ that are being persecuted. We're seeing this in Nigeria. We're seeing it in India. We're seeing it in many parts of the world. But it's acute in Nigeria. So make that a matter of prayer. Weigh in with your member of Congress as well, because Congress can encourage the administration to issue this declaration as a country of particular concern. All right, you got about 90 seconds left. What do we need to be watching as it pertains to China?
Well, Xi Jinping is a dictator with very few equals in the world. He's committing genocide against the Muslims in Xinjiang as we talk. Still going on. And the world has looked askance. He's taken over Hong Kong and is persecuting believers there as well as pro-democracy activists. He does have his eyes very firmly fixed on Taiwan to bring his level of repression there. But the Christians everywhere, this synodization of Christianity and all other faiths to comport to Xi Jinping's Marxist model is well underway, where everything comports to what he wants. Everybody reports on each other. There's surveillance in your church if you do have a church, and often they don't. So house church movement has been crushed. It is an all-out assault to either stamp out completely faith in God or to completely control and manipulate it. But there are great Christians pushing against that, but they're at great risk. They go to prison, they suffer, they're tortured, and sometimes killed.
Another matter of prayer.
Absolutely. China, and he wants to export that model.
Right.
He generally is his way.
He has been, and the technology to support it has been good. We tracked that when I was at the commission.
Yep.
Chris Smith, again, appreciate all that you have done, are doing to speak up for the voiceless and to defend the defenseless literally around the globe.
Thank you, Tony. Thank you again. And again, everyone watching has to know it. You've done an amazing job. Not here, not just here, but also with the commission. It's just incredible.